Simulan mo ang pagbabago, sikapin mo at abutin mo. Manalig ka at huwag isipin mga pagsubok nating haharapin. Nagkakaisa sa isang hangarin, pagtutulungan at pagmamahalan. Bumangon na sa isang panaginip, tatatahakin natin at tutuparin. Sumama na sa makakaisa ng bawat taong ang sigaw ay pag-asa. Isang lawit ng bayang magiting sa pagkakaisa sa mga adikain. Maglilingkod, magmamahal ng lubusan, alang-alang sa ating bayang pinagmulan. Kayo, ikaw, tayo ang simulain ng pagbabago ng takbo ng buhay na hirap. Kaya tara na, halina, tayo na sa isang kainta. Simulan mo ang pagbabago, sikapin mo at abutin mo. Manalig ka at huwag isipin mga pagsubok nating haharapin. Nagkakaisa sa isang hangarin, ang pagtutulungan at pagmamahalan. Umangon na sa isang panaginip, natatahakin natin at tutuparin. Sumama na sa kakaisa ng bawat taong sigaw ay pag-asa. Isang lawit ng bayang magiting sa pagkakaisa sa mga adikain. Maglilingkod, magmamahal ng lubusan, alang-alang sa ating bayang pinagmulan. Kayo, ikaw, tayo ang simulain ng pagbabago ng takbo ng buhay na hirap. Kaya tara na, halina, tayo na sa isang kainta. Isang lawit ng bayang magiting sa pagkakaisa sa mga adikain. Maglilingkod, magmamahal ng lubusan, alang-alang sa ating bayang pinagmulan. Isang lawit ng bayang magiting sa pagkakaisa sa mga adikain. Maglilingkod, magmamahal ng lubusan, alang-alang sa ating bayang pinagmulan. Kayo, ikaw, tayo ang simulain ng pagbabago ng takbo ng buhay na hirap. Kaya tara na, halina, tayo na.
And thank you so much po for your participation in singing the One Kainta hymn. And maybe it's been a while since narinig po natin yung hymn na to, hymn ng ating bayan, and we got reminded kung saan bayan talaga tayo nagsimula, saan tayo nanggaling. So wag na po natin patagalin pa. I would like to introduce the person behind this coaching webinar, our very hardworking sports development officer of One Kainta. Let's give a round of applause. Kahit silent clap lang po for Sir John Patrick Pidjong de la Paz.
Yeah, good afternoon, coaches. Good afternoon, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon sa mga guests natin. Siyempre, unang-una dun sa mga coaches natin na nandito ngayon, na nag-attend ngayon. Unang-una kay Coach Eski, nandyan siya. Maraming salamat, sir, sa ating kay Coach Ed Obiena, nandyan din siya. Kay Ma'am Judith Staples, nandyan din. Coach Marty Ilagan, sports consultant. Coach Edric Francisco, sports consultant din natin siya. And Coach Alan Kaydik, sports consultant din at speakers din natin. So, maraming salamat po sa pagsuporta. Maraming salamat din. Unang-una syempre sa ating mahal na Mayor Kit Nieto, sa walang sawang pagsuporta, sa walang sawang pagbibigay ng inspirasyon sa atin para maituloy at madiretso ang buhay dito sa kahit tayo may pandemic. So, nagsimula yung pandemic, lahat tayo parang hindi natin alam ang gagawin. Madami tayong event na nawala, madami tayong event na hindi natuloy, madami tayong plano na hindi natuloy. So, sobrang naapanibago. Dumating din yung panahon na may panahon na nalulungkot tayo, hindi natin alam kung ano ba mangyayari bukas, hindi natin alam kung ano ba yung susunod. So, pero syempre, maraming salamat pa rin. Sabi nga ngayon, pagka ikaw ay buhay pa ngayong panahon na to, malaking blessing ngayon. So, maraming salamat din sa God. Maraming salamat. Tapos, ang tanong ngayon, sabi nga, ano ba susunod? Ano na ba yung next na gagawin natin? Ano na ba dapat? So, syempre, alam niyo naman, sabi nga ang Pinoy, ang masasabi natin, Pinoy pa ba? Lalo na kung tiga-CAINTA ka ba? Di ba? Ayun yun tiga-CAINTA ako. So, lagi meron tayong next move. So, eto yon. Kaya nabuo natin tong webinar na to, coaching webinar. Actually, nagsimula sa kumustahan, nagsimula sa hanggang itutuloy-tuloy na natin to. Kailangan natin kasi magkaroon tayo ng mga kasama at maituloy natin ang paghikayat sa mga bata na ma-engage sa sports. So, maraming salamat siyempre, unang-una din kay Nicole. Thank you. Tumutulong ka sa mga kasama ko dyan sa sports office. Maraming salamat. So, ayun, welcome po. Sana po coaches, actually excited talaga ako dito. Ang daming, lalo na yung mga speakers natin, iba-iba So, sana para ma-share sa inyo at ikapulutan nyo ng aral, kapulutan nyo ng bagong kaalaman para dito sa ating, ma-share natin dito sa bayan natin. So, yun lang. Sana simula start hanggang matapos tayo next week, sana nandyan kayo. And para din yung maibigay namin yung certificates, you need to attend simula up to last webinar. So, yun lang coaches. Enjoy kayo. Alam ko talaga mag-enjoy kayo dito. Participate lang tayo. So good afternoon everyone. Mabuhay po tayong lahat. Mabuhay tayong lahat. Ingat tayo lahat. Yan po.
Thank you so much, Sir Pijong. Maraming salamat po for your opening remarks. Proceed po tayo. I think meron din po message para sa atin si Mayor Kit.
Yes.
Kahit may COVID, hindi naman titigil ang buhay natin eh. Lumagpas na nga ang summer, hindi nga tayo train ng mga potential athletes natin. So I just deemed it wise to at least stop a lot of our people who are skilled, who are trained, who are good at a particular sport, just so they'd be able to coach the younger set, the younger generation, to become good athletes, excellent athletes, under global standards siguro. I think that's really paramount sa isang gobyerno. We get to hone them in whatever situation we are in. So I just hope that you get to give your best para marami namang matutunan yung mga mananampalataya sa inyo. Cheers and good luck, guys.
Alright. I think yan, message ng ating punong bayan, Mayor Kit. So, maraming salamat po, Mayor Kit. So, discuss ko lang syempre ngayon yung ating mission and vision. Mission ng sports. I have some, ayan. Mission to develop and help CAINTA athletes to excel in their chosen sports with a good moral and values. So, vision, to inspire and empower CAINTA athletes towards achieving their dreams and helping the town to be known as town of good athletes with positive attitudes. So, laging nandun yung positive attitudes and moral values. So, para makuha natin yung mission and vision natin, eto, isi-share natin sa inyo ang 1 CAINTA, para makuha natin yan, ang 1 CAINTA Sports Gold Standard. Number 1, no excuses. Ano ba siya? No excuses. We need to work hard. Hindi pa pwede yun dahil ganito, dahil ganyan. Hindi kailangan. Wala yan. Hindi hadlang lagi ang pandemic para sa dahil lang, 'di ba? Katulad nito, hindi titigil ang sports dahil lang sa pandemic. So, no excuses yan, coaches. Sana ito i-share nyo din sa mga athletes nyo. Gamitin natin itong standard para pagkuha natin doon mission and vision natin. Katulong namin kayo, kayo talaga ang inaasahan namin para dito. So, eto yan. Number 1, no excuses. Number 2, communication. Kailangan natin, we need to communicate. Kailangan sabihin natin, banggitin natin, kailangan tulungan natin ang isa't isa. Kasi kung wala tayong communication, baliwala lang din yung ginagawa natin. So let's practice siyempre yung communication. Gamitin natin. Number 3, trust. Kailangan pagkatiwalaan natin yung bawat isa. Kailangan kami sa gobyerno, nagtitiwala kami sa lahat siyempre ng kakayanan nyo. Unang-una siyempre kailangan magtiwala tayo sa sarili natin. Kailangan maniwala tayo sa mga atleta natin. Kailangan maniwala tayo sa sarili natin. So, isama natin yan. magtiwala tayo sa mga athletes natin, magtiwala tayo sa mga kasamahan natin, gaya ng ginagawang pagtitiwala syempre nila sa atin. So, sana gamitin natin yan, magtiwala po tayo. Responsibility. Kailangan umako tayo ng responsibilidad. Hindi pa pwedeng dahil hindi ko na yan. Pababayaan na lang natin. Kailangan meron tayong responsibilidad. Responsibilidad ko to. As a coach, responsibilidad natin to. Responsibilidad natin ang mga bawat bata. Responsibilidad natin ang team natin. Responsibilidad natin ang bawat isa. So, yan, importante din na i-take natin yung responsibility. Kunin natin. Hindi pa pwedeng kasali lang ako. May responsibilidad ako. So, and 5, care. Siyempre, kailangan meron kang pag-aaruga. Kailangan meron kang hindi natatapos yung pagiging coach. Alam ko dyan, lahat kayo ganyan coaches. Hindi natatapos ang pagiging coach sa loob ng court, sa loob ng playing area. Hanggang bahay, hanggang minsan nga sinasabi nga, di ba tayo yung nagiging pangalawang parent ng ating mga athletes. Sa atin sila tumatakbo. Minsan nga mas close pa sila sa atin eh. Sila pa yung sa atin pa sila nag-open, 'di ba? So, yan, importante yung magkaroon tayo ng care. Hindi lang sa atin, pati doon sa mga ibang events. 'Di ba? Kasi totoo yan, tayo lang din yung inaasahan ng mga atleta natin. So, huwag natin silang pabayaan. Magmalasakit din tayo sa ibang sports. I-share natin yung nalalaman natin. Huwag natin sabihin na hindi naman yan, hindi ko na sila kailangan tulungan dahil iba naman sila. So, hindi, magkakasama tayo, isa tayo. So next, respect. Kailangan yung respeto nandyan. Respeto sa sarili, respeto sa mga atleta, sa mga bata, respeto dun sa mga baguhan, respeto sa mga nauna. Hindi naman kasi ibig sabihin na baguhan ka sa isang larangan, wala ka pang alam. Baka kasi meron pang mas bagong kaalaman na maibibigay sa atin yung mga baguhan. So, respeto rin natin sila. Siyempre, sa mga baguhan naman, matuto tayong rumespeto dun sa mga nauna sa atin. Respetuhin natin yung kanilang mga experiences, lahat. So, ibigay natin yung respeto sa kanila. Number 7, intelligence. Lagi natin unawain, hindi lang tayo magsisettle sa eto na. Laging dagdagan natin ang ating mga kaalaman. Lagi nating sumama sa mga bago at mga like this, webinar. Dagdagan lagi natin yung nalalaman natin kasi parang laging may bago na lang. Sabi nga, ang cellphone niya, lagi na lang may bagong, di ba? May bagong unit. So, lagi yan meron. Tapos, syempre, lagi natin gamitin yung mga itinuro sa atin. Lagi tayong, kung layo yung mga nasa laro, nasa laban, lagi natin gamitin ang mga natutunan natin. Maging matalino tayo lagi. So, yun. Very poise. Ba't ko ba isinama ang poise? Kasi, isa lang ibig sabihin yan eh. Kahit sino pa yung makaharap natin, yung sa laban natin, kahit sino makaharap natin sa laban, kahit sino ba yan, kahit sino pa sila, mas malalakas ba yan o ano, wag mawawala yung composure natin. Wag matataranta. Siyempre, lagi, nandun pa rin yung ano, sabi nga, di ba? Nandun pa rin yung composure. Wag yung makikita pa lang, napapanghinaan na tayo ng loob. Turo natin yan sa ating mga atleta. Kahit sino pa yan, kahit sino pa sila, malaking eskwelahan, malaking bayan, eto tayo. Ano lang tayo, relax lang. So, next, flexibility. Alam ko, maraming coaches ang gumagawa na nito. Siyempre nga, di ba? Una-una, napaka-flexible na ng mga bawat coaches natin. Kahit kulang ang facilities, kulang ang gamit, pero laban lang. Tuloy lang tayo. Kailangan, hindi tayo dahil wala tayong ganito, walang ganyan. Tapos na. Hindi doon. Gagawa natin ang paraan. Gagawa natin, be flexible tayo. Hindi tayo pwede na dahil walang yun nga, di ba tayo nga kahit walang soccer field, pero nakakapag-soccer tayo. Kahit walang football field pa, nakakapag-baseball tayo. Ngayon, flexibility, napaka-importante niyan. Wala pa tayong mga open na sports facilities. So, kaya kailangan natin maging flexible para hindi matenga ang ating mga athletes. So, pero syempre, kahit naman ganun, itinatry natin na ibigay lahat ng pangangailangan ng bawat sports, no? At saka bawat atleta. Excuse me. Tapos gusto ko nga palang banggitin din, yung oval natin, siguro pagbubukas, pagkatapos na tong lockdown na to, pag pwede na, siguro kasabay niyan yung pag-open din ng oval natin. So, excited ako doon. Alam ko doon magkikita-kita din ang bawat sports, malaking tulong din yan sa atin. Unselfishness. Ano ba ang selfishness? Huwag naman buwakaw. Alam mo yun? Walang matuto tayong i-share kung ano yung meron tayo. Hindi lang sa gamit, material things. Siguro pati sa ano yan. Pati sa mga nalalaman natin. I-share natin. Kasi tayo-tayo rin naman ang magkakasama eh. So, share lang natin yung mga nalalaman natin. Huwag natin akuin lang sa bawat isa. Lalo na sa mga bata. 'Di ba? Share natin. Share lang natin yung mga nalalaman natin. Aggressive. Sa lahat ng bagay, maging aggressive tayo. Pilitin natin lagi tayo yung nauuna. Lagi tayong agresibo sa bawat bagay. Huwag tayong palambot-lambot. So, 12, performance. Ipakita natin yung best lagi natin. Sa lahat ng laban, ibigay natin, syempre nga, di ba sabi, ang tiga CAINTA, binibigay lagi ang 120%. So, dapat laging ganun tayo. Lagi nating ibilin sa ating mga kasama yan. Number 13, lagi natin dadalhin, syempre, tatandaan. Pride. Proud ako na tiga CAINTA ako. Dapat lagi may ganun. Huwag mawawala yan sa atin. 14, believe. Kailangan maniwala. Kailangan maniwala tayo sa sarili natin. Kailangan magtiwala din tayo. Nakakayanin natin. trust the process, maniwala ka sa ginagawa mo, maniwala ka dun sa mga ginagawa natin, maniwala ka dun sa mga pinaniniwalaan mo. So, importante yan na naniniwala ka na mananalo at magsasucceed ka. Okay? Number 15, last, syempre, trust God. Everything ng ginagawa natin, maniwala tayo kay God na ibibigay sa atin. Humingi tayo ng tulong, gabay sa Panginoon para siya sa success natin. Yan lang, coaches, maraming salamat. In-expect ko na sa mga susunod pa, at magiging kasama ka pala kayo namin ng sports office, ng One CAINTA, kayo talaga ang ilalagay na aasahan namin para sa community nyo. Isa pa pala, gagawa ako ng group para i-update kayo kasi hindi lang naman ito. Umpisa pa lang tong webinar natin na to. Susunod na yan, marami pa tayong susunod na trainings. Okay? So, good afternoon. Bigay ko na ulit po kayo kay Nicole.
Thank you so much, Sir Pijong. Maraming salamat po. We heard Sir Pijong talk about the mission and vision ng ating bayan. And it's really important to hear that one para lang mabalik tayo kung ano ba talaga yung goal natin sa bayan natin para sa sports. We need to stick with our goals even we're in the pandemic situation. No? And narinig din po natin kanina mga taga-CAINTA, positive attitude talaga. And titigil minsan pero hindi susuko and pagpapatuloy lang talaga natin yung mga nasimulan natin before COVID, and right now we're moving forward during this pandemic situation. And that's what we wanted to see to our players. But how can we see to our players if sarili mismo natin, hindi natin sisimulan baguhin ba or mag-adapt sa new normal? Tayong mga coaches, tayong mga coordinators, leaders din po ng industry na to, if ano pong mangyayari kung hindi rin po tayo mag-adapt sa change. And yun nga po, coaches is playing really an important role to the players, especially right now. Marami pong hindi motivated maglaro, maraming bagsak, nahihirapan mag-exercise, lalo na nasa bahay lang po tayo. But to further discuss about the roles of our coaches, right now, especially about the challenges and opportunities of sports given this pandemic situation, we're very blessed to have our guest speaker for today po. I wanted to introduce po sa inyo yung speaker natin ngayon. Just to give a little background about him, he graduated from UP Diliman, Bachelor of Sports Science. He finished his Master's on Exercise and Sports Science in the University of Sydney in Australia. He was also the strength and conditioning coach of FEU and Ateneo before, and SNC rin po, SNC coach also of the Philippine Taekwondo team and Philippine football team. He's the faculty and program head of sports of Magna Anima Education System Incorporated, which focus more in the development of coach education programs, particularly in the grassroots level. And he's one of the consultant also of the DepEd and leading right now the DepEd Coaches Development Program. Without further ado po, let's all welcome Coach Eski Ripoll. Let's give him a silent clap. Coach Eski.
Thank you. Hello. Thank you, Nicole. Welcome sa lahat, and I hope you're having a good afternoon. So as Coach Nicole mentioned, there are some things that I want to talk to you about. So actually, tatlong tema ang gusto ko sana pag-usapan natin. Yung una is yung intindihin yung konteksto nyo, tsaka ng mga bata, lalo na sa panahon na yon. Tapos yung pangalawa, understand and to appreciate the coaching framework. Tapos yung pangatlo, pagkakaroon ng long-term athlete development framework. Then I'll talk more about this later, no? So iniimbitahan ko kayo na makisali sa atin sa pagpapanayan natin sa pamamagitan ng chat box. So yes, I'll greatly appreciate kung makaka-type kayo ng mga feedback nyo, questions, and your reflections doon, no? So umpisa tayo, no? So sa first question is, sa konteksto ng sports at physical activity sa inyong lugar, sa CAINTA, para sa inyo, anong nakikita niyong mga pagsubok sa pagiging coach sa panahon na yon? Okay, so if you can, type that sa chat box na yon, and I will try to also see if I can read your comments. Okay. Antayin natin para may mag-type. Again, I'll repeat the question. No? Sa konteksto na yon, ng sports and looking at physical activity, para sa inyo, anong nakikita niyo mga pagsubok ng pagiging coach? Lalo na sa panahon na yon. Comments na. Lacking of interest. Sino yung may lacking of interest? Yung coaches lacking of interest? I have a question. Students particularly. Okay. So meron dito isa nag-comment. I guess nababasa nyo rin about motivation. Motivating yung athletes. Okay. Lack of athletes, facilities, closed ang facilities. Yes, dahil sa sitwasyon na yun. So walang lugar kung saan pwede mag-train o mag-practice. Ayan, students are not allowed to go outside. Oo, yung current crisis na yun, trying to survive, I guess, is more important. And when you say support of parents, Miss Eileen, is this the positive, they're supportive, or talagang negative, walang support ang parents? Okay. Sige.
Slice of cake.
More focus sa gadgets. Now, okay, this is good, no? So na meron tayo mga, you can continue to chat. Okay lang yan habang nagsasalita ako. So these are mga context na gusto natin tignan, no? Kung ano yung mga challenges. And that's why gusto ko sana bigyan diin sana dalawang points na I don't think na mention nyo, but siguro pag-isipan nyo kung relevant to, and let's give me a thumbs up or a yes or no sa chat box kung okay to mga points. Yung basically, I think sinabi ni Coach Nicole yung trabaho natin as bilang coach. At least madami akong kilala na walang trabaho dahil walang sports clinics, and so wala silang sweldo. So challenge yun, no? At sa context ng mga bata, dahil sinasabi nyo, lagi silang online, they're not interested, not motivated, and then other challenges. Actually, yung concern ko, tsaka hindi sila nakakalabas, lagi na sa loob ng bahay dahil bawal. One main point here is yung fitness levels ng mga bata, yung social development ng mga bata, at syempre yung psychological health ng mga bata. Actually, pati sa atin, di ba? So these are two major points na gusto ko sana talagang bigyan diin na silipin natin, no? One is yung hanap buhay. Yun yung kailangan natin silipin is how can we create jobs or how do we look for opportunities na makakahanap tayo ng sweldo o ng hanap buhay, no? And I think ito yung ginagawa ng CAINTA na yun na tumutulong sa inyo, nagtutulungan kayong lahat para gumawa ng sports program, hindi lang para sa coaches but pati para sa mga bata, no? So again, focusing sa coaches, no? I'm going to show you a presentation which I will share now. Just give me a few seconds. Bagal ako maneuver through the workings. So focus tayo dito, no? So ang unang tanong ko is like, how do coaches learn? Binanggit ni Sir Pijong about yung knowledge natin na kailangan natin, we have to build on, and also kailangan natin i-share. So I want to go back dito sa slide na to. You can look at it, but siguro ibabahagi ko dito isang kwento. Kailangan niyo ba si Phil Jackson? Si Phil Jackson is actually the head coach formerly of the Lakers. I think he still is, and previously during my time in Chicago Bulls. Pero nag-umpisa siya as a player for the New Jersey Nets. And dito nagkaroon siya ng
Check the lights.
may commercial dito.
Really? Yay! How many stars?
Can we
Yay!
stay muted lang po? Thank you po.
So, going back to the story of Phil Jackson, di ba? So, nagumpisa siya bilang basketball player. He played for New Jersey Nets. At that time, nung rookie year siya, na-injure siya. And he was under yung coach na, si Coach Red, who taught him a lot of things. Dahil kahit injured siya, pinanood niya yung game, dahil nasa bench siya, and talagang inintindi niya yung game. Tapos mula dito, naging assistant coach siya ng New Jersey Nets. And then eventually, pumunta siya sa Puerto Rico para mag-head coach ng isang team. So dito inamin niya na madami siya naging pagkakamali in terms of coaching at maling taktika na ginamit na habang head coach siya doon. No? So pero tinuloy niya yung pag-aaral niya, yung experience niya in that game of basketball hanggang sa isang panahon na nanalo siya ng championship in Puerto Rico. And then this is the experience na ginather niya. And this is what we call, if you look at the slide, as unmediated informal learning. So ito yung opportunity of experience natin, kumbaga kung ano sinasabi natin. Pagkatapos, kinuha siya ng Chicago Bulls bilang assistant coach. At dito sumailalim siya kay Coach Doug Collins at mga ibang assistant coaches. Tinuruan siya more about basketball, the tactics. And I guess dito rin nagdi-discover niya yung triangle offense in terms of those who are into basketball. And dito sinabi niya sa isang speech niya, yung sa Hall of Fame speech niya, na naging instrumental yung mga kasama niya dito sa coaches dahil sila yung nag-mentor sa kanya to become who he is now. Etong sinasabi natin na non-formal mediated learning. So I showed these two circles dito is that kailangan natin ma-appreciate natin na siguro in your own experience na we've gone through many forms of this. Isa na yon is this webinar. This is some sort of non-formal mediated learning, di ba? Pero wag natin i-discount na madaming information, kaya malaki yung blue dyan, is madami tayong natutunan from others, from other sources, from the experience. Coach Nicole, is my audio still okay?
Yes, Coach Eski.
Okay, yung laptop ko lang medyo Okay, so hanggang sa panahon na yun, if you know the story of si Phil Jackson, of course, he's now with 11 NBA championships, 4 NBA All-Star Game head coach titles. He was the NBA Coach of the Year in 1996, and just a few years ago, he was enshrined to the Basketball Hall of Fame. So, binanggit ko tong kwento na to dahil ito siguro isang model of how coaches learn. And ito siguro dapat pag-isipan natin kung in our own stories, kung how we've learned to become a coach. Okay, pero having said that, kailangan natin may isang sistema. Hindi lang, okay, this is how we learn, pero may dapat isang sistema na sumusuporta sa pag-develop ng coaches. At siguro dito nais kong i-share ang isang framework na binahagi sa akin ng kaibigan ko. Siya isang research fellow sa Leeds Beckett University at miyembro rin ng tinatawag na International Council for Coaching Excellence. Pwede niyo i-google yan, tsaka makikita niyo yan. Dito nagbunga isang framework. Ito po yung framework for the coach development. Siguro simple lang yung konsepto nito, no? Una, kailangan magkaroon ng development pathway, yung coach. Katulad sa nakita niyo sa slide. Tapos, siguro at sinasabi rin dito na maganda kung may mga iba't ibang levels. sa mga PE teachers, especially in the DepEd system, I'm sure familiar sila sa term na master teacher, master coach. So that's what we're also looking at here. And if you look at mga different, those who are involved sa mga national sporting associations, you have your licensing. Meron rin halos katumbas nito, di ba? Pero ang hindi common sa nakikita ko na yun, sa experience ko na yun, is that yung pag-realize ng pag-angat sa qualification o certification, ay hindi ibig sabihin na pangat rin yung coaching mo in terms of coaching elite athletes. In other words, magaling kang coach daw kung nagko-coach ka ng college or professional team. Kung baguhan kang coach, nagko-coach ka ng bata. Dapat medyo maiba yung konsepto na yon. So dapat pwede tayo maging master coach, kagaya nakikita nyo sa slide, kahit bata lang yung level. And having said that, in terms of administrative concerns, kumbaga sa sweldo, parehas lang yung sweldo ng master coach, whether for bata or for elite athletes. Later on, I'll emphasize this in terms of the athlete development, kung anong relevance nito. No? So yun, so that is what I wanted to share with you in terms of the coach development framework. Tsaka meron rin, I think, binabanggit si Coach Nicole sa inyo o sa iba sa inyo about yung community. And this is what we call about yung participation. So dito siguro ko nais pagtugon yung sa CAINTA na kayo din sana with the head of led by Sir Pijong is, sana gumawa kayo ng sarili nyong coaching framework at development pathway. And I think the only way to do this is dapat it should be a consolidated effort. So everybody, lahat ng stakeholders are involved in making such a framework. So pwede nyo i-align sa international frameworks or sa mga iba't ibang international certifications. Para at least magkaroon ng oportunidad ang mga coaches, kayo, na i-mentor at mag-mentor ng mga ibang coaches at mga bata. Pero kailangan sana din, katumbas nito, so is that may programa o curriculum that is reflective with platforms to build communities of practice. Okay, so ulit gusto ko lang kayo imbitahan na mag-share ulit sa kwento ni Phil Jackson at ng coaching framework about your thoughts about this. So if I can invite you, please type in the chat box your reflections on this framework or your experience or your stories. Okay, while you're processing that, I'll ask another follow-up question para at least dalawang pwede nyo something to reflect on. Ngayon, I'll ask you, bakit kayo nagko-coach ngayon? Or bakit kayo nandito na yun sa webinar na to? Okay, we have Jude and Lori who answered. Okay. So one is not a coach but wanting to learn from experienced coaches. Develop your coaching knowledge. So I'll wait for a few more and then I'll continue and build on your statements. Okay. Okay, so in terms of, siguro I'd go back yung sinabi ni, sino to? Ni Eileen, and for the others who are learning, etong slide at saka yung previous slide, the one about mediated, etong slide, is dito sana ma-appreciate natin that we learn different ways. One webinar is one, which is a portion of it, but a lot of learning from the others is also a good way, no? And siguro gusto ko talaga i-share doon is yung mentoring part. And then isa slide na to, ito yung slide siguro more for Sir Pijong and the others is, but for all is that kailangan natin ma-appreciate na based on our function, madami tayong dapat matutunan kung ano mga knowledge natin na kailangan to achieve and play that role. And that's why I wanted to share this is na hindi ibig sabihin na kung coach ka ng bata ay hanggang doon ka na lang or whatever. Parang beginner coach ka. So that's what we wanted to share, no? And then to move on, so thank you for the other comments. Okay, it's good why you're coaching. And leading up to know why you're coaching, the benefits of it, it was shared, I hope I got this right, yung vision and mission nyo. And ito yung gusto natin i-emphasize dyan, no? Is that with this vision and mission, hindi lang ito para sa mga atleta na, or para sa mga atleta in that sense, in our sense of athlete, elite athlete. Para sa akin, ang definition ng atleta ay lahat na nagpa-participate sa sports. Whether it be for performance or for participation. Okay? So, kung may development framework tayo, coach development framework, dapat responsibilidad natin na magbigay rin ng magandang programa sa mga bata. Ito yung sinasabi ng mga iba kung para magbigay ng programa, magandang programa sa bata and how we learn and to make one, right? So, dapat first and foremost, naka-align siya sa vision and mission. Kaya linagay ko yan dyan. Tapos, ang dapat natin isa puso dito, ang ugat sa pagtuturo ng sports na binabanggit ng iba is that ito para bigyan ng oportunidad yung mga bata sa CAINTA, lalo na sa konteksto nyo, na manuyo sa kanilang passion, di ba? To pursue their passion bilang isang atletla. Whether nga there are high performance or for participation. That does not matter, but dapat for all. Para at saka magkaroon ng magandang asal. Ito, I think ilang beses inulit ni Sir Pijong na hindi lang becoming a good athlete, but in terms with good character and good values. So dito pinapasok natin, sinasabi natin na kailangan natin bigyan pansin ang fitness aspect ng bata, which usually ginagawa natin sa sports. But more so important is yung social development and psychological health ng bata. So lalo na sa panahon na yon, very limited yung exposure nila with other kids. So yung social development niya is compromised, kumbaga. And yun yung kailangan natin i-stress. So ang pagiging coach natin ay hindi limitado sa pagtuturo ng skills, kung hindi pagiging isang tatay o nanay din sa mga bata na to o kaibigan. So gusto ko lang i-share ulit yung isang framework which I think I would like to share with you. Papalabas ko na lahat ng bullet points. Yan. Itong framework, if you're not familiar with, was developed in Canada. It's called the Long-Term Athlete Development Framework. Itong LTAD na to, may madaming concepts, madaming ideas, madaming principles behind each stage, no? Pero I summarized it into one slide, more of like some sort of take-home messages, no? So one is to provide opportunities again for all to engage in physical activity. So whether it be participation and performance. May short story lang ako dito. Sa context ng public school, di ba, we will, actually pati sa private school, usong-uso yung selection ng mga bata for the varsity team. Pero ang challenge natin with the administrators, the sports directors or equivalent is this is the challenge. We want everybody as much as possible to participate in some sort of physical activity, whether it be sports, dance, or recreation. Now, ito yung isang challenge. Kailangan natin talagang isa puso natin, di ba? And not only agree with it conceptually, but to take action. So, ito yung challenge rin sa inyo, para sa city nyo rin is, how can you accommodate as much as possible all the kids, hindi ko lang alam kung ilan yung mga bata sa mga lugar nyo, to participate in some sort of physical activity. Okay, and that's the type of program na kailangan natin i-develop. It's not to develop a program only for a few, but it's a program to develop for the many or for all. And most important, also important is they should be playing or exercising every day. In terms of this exercising, anong gusto natin i-develop dito are the fundamental movement skills as well as yung fundamental sports skills. If you can ask me questions later if you want to know what are fundamental movement skills and fundamental sports skills. I'll leave that to you to ask. And of course, ito medyo nagiging, I would feel na somewhat controversial, especially for mga clubs, is to participate in multi-sport during the younger years, especially for children 12 years old and below. Dapat mas madaming sports, mas maganda. Okay, so ito yung siguro 5 key points na gusto ko lang i-share, I mean from the many, from this long-term athlete development framework. So to wrap it up, going back to the beginning and all the way up to the end, so 3 main points. First, to appreciate how coaches learn. Okay, and second point is we have to make sure that there's a system, a framework na kung saan pwede matuto yung mga coaches nito, and that's something we have to work together with. I mean, kayo mga coaches and the sports office. And third, bilang isang coach in your own context is to try to follow at least these 5 key points. And if you want, you can read more about this on how to develop your own coaching program for your respective sports. Okay, so that would be, I think, my last slide. Here, actually, I'll share this with you just an addition. I mentioned about participation and performance, diba? So this is what I mean by all. So may mga kids will be on the playing box in this quadrant, and there are those who are emerging athletes. So ito yung mga nag-aspire. And then of course, there you have those that are just recreational, just for the fun, and you have those who are for performance. So again, as a coach, as an administrator, as an organizer, we have to find ways and means na magkaroon ng programs for all these participants in the sport. So that's why we call it the inclusive sports participation matrix. Okay, so thank you. Of course, we're open now for question and answers.
Thank you so much, Coach Eski. We'll have your question and answer for about 10 minutes. You can type your questions in the comment box or the chat box po, and then Coach Eski will answer your questions. Sige po, type na po tayo sa box. Again, a recap lang din about what Coach Eski discussed a while ago. He introduced to us a coach development framework po. Kasi we have programs naman eh. Before, we have programs. Right now, for sure, marami rin po tayong mga programs na nagagawa. Kung hindi man po, pero may mga adjustments na po tayo nagawa sa kanya-kanya po nating team. And napaka-importante rin po na we're on the same page, and yung gusto po talagang mangyari is naka-align din po sa goals din po natin. Diba? And lalo na po siguro sa pandemya ngayon, we have a chance to sit down, write everything also, to know where we are right now so we can move forward. Na-discuss din po ni Coach Eski yun nga, yung parang yung importansya ng fitness aspect, social development, psychological health of the children. So, Coach Eski, may tanong po. Paano na daw po yung sports ngayon? What do you think ang susunod para sa sports industry in the community context and sa school context, especially in DepEd, Coach?
And I'll first answer yung sa DepEd, no? Like sa sinabi mo, I'm involved with DepEd to develop their coach development program. Sa konteksto nila, one thing you have to appreciate kasi in DepEd, it's a nationwide thing. So kung ano nangyayari sa CAINTA is definitely different sa nangyayari sa mga Visayas and Mindanao. So that's what we have to appreciate. And when I say this is, magiging iba't ibang strategy depending on each location. So it's hard to generalize what will happen to sports now. But I guess yung main challenge sa sports is really yung social distancing. And without the vaccine or anything, is how do we continue sports now? And that's why I always, when I was talking to Coach Nicole, kaya kailangan natin to reinvent ourselves. Like katulad sa vision and mission niya, sports is not just about playing the sport per se, but it's about molding the kids, the youth. And we just use sports as a platform. So kung tayo as coaches ay higit pa sa pagturo ng mga skills, ay we can give that social interaction that they can get through online, parang ganito, which nang ginagawa ng mga iba't ibang coaches, and to provide for their psychological development as well. Pero madali sabihin yon, pero mahirap. I mean, hindi ako psychologist, hindi ako sociologist in that sense. And these are things na siguro yun yung mga kailangan knowledge natin that we have to acquire in order for us to be able to be better coaches. I say better in a very relative term. Better coaches for our athletes, for our students, for our kids. And when you talk about community, and that's what I was talking about, Coach Nicole, is you have your own context. Each barangay, baka may hotspot na barangay, so mas mahirap, may mga hindi ganong places, is that you still have to find ways and means to interact with your players or athletes. So I hope I answered that question.
Yes, Coach Eski, that's really important po. Thank you so much po for answering that question. Let's move forward po. There's a question here po. What should be done in order to achieve equal opportunity to all, both players and coaches, to excel in sports?
Right, let me just absorb that question. Good question.
Yeah, equal opportunity for both players and coaches to excel in sports.
Well, for players is one, if that's why I presented that framework. If you sort of apply yung framework na yun, to be specific is you just accept everybody. So you just become inclusive in that nature. And that's how I think you would be able to achieve an equal opportunity. Limitations nito, I guess, is your capacity to absorb how many kids, the facility, the equipment. But more so, I think another way to look at inclusivity sa sports, sa mga players, is ang pagko-coach nyo, how you coach. Okay? If we don't we look at the player as developing them on a long-term basis. Hindi yung focus tayo sa magagaling lang, or focus tayo sa pagpanalo sa competition next month or within this year. Diba? Kasi kung focus tayo masyado sa winning, syempre, tututok lang tayo sa mga players na magagaling. Diba? And ang kailangan natin is hindi. Dapat i-treat natin na very athlete-centered, very individual approach in training them so that you can develop a program for each player to develop long-term. Hindi yung for the division meet or the regional meet lang. Diba? I guess that's how it is. Yun. But for the coach, I guess it's a coach development framework. To keep an open mind, learning is continuous, and to learn in different ways. Mentoring, reflection, seminars, formal education. Yun yung kailangan natin gawin parati. And actually, I liked what sinabi ni Sir Pijong earlier in the gold standards is communicating. We have to learn to talk to each other more and more often and share with each other. Yung sinabi ni Sir Pijong na let's share our knowledge, share our story, share our experience. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, Coach Eski. This is from Coach Ed also, echoing your answer. I agree with inclusive sports program, but our leaders should also have a separate program for developing the elite program and a separate support program for those with world level potential. So all agencies' role should be clear with coordination for continuity of the program. What do you think about this, Coach Eski?
I agree in a sense that dapat, well, especially with the coordination, hindi, the development of athletes, hindi lang siya one agency, one institution, di ba? Lahat dapat involved. Lahat dapat coordinated, especially pag organized ng mga competitions. And yes, there should be a program for all, like sinabi ko, whether you're elite, whether you're recreation, whether you're just for play, dapat may programa lahat yan. Dapat may competition opportunities lahat yan. And yes, they are separate programs. When you go to the younger years, medyo mas I won't say really separate, but complementary program that's flexible enough and inclusive pa rin.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right, Coach. Lalo na, di ba nga dapat yung sport, it's for everybody, di ba? It's non-discriminating dapat. So everybody can join, and it's really up to the heads, the leaders, kung paano nila mapapatakbo yun sa community nila and sa mga existing elite athletes nila. So napaka-importante po talaga nun. Okay, let's go po sa next question po natin. Coach Eski, given our quarantine situation, do you currently hold an online coaching with an athlete? If yes, share with us on how you make it work.
Ako personally, I don't handle athletes at the moment. I actually handle coaches. Yun yung my field right now. So I would like to handle athletes again later on, pero yun nga, given the situation, I'm not directly involved with them. I focus now more on teaching students and teaching coaches. So, but actually, I think who can give you a better answer to this is Coach Nicole, because they have an experience now of handling athletes online. Please share.
Opo, if pwede ko pong sagutin kahit fast lang, we're currently doing an online volleyball camps po. Nasimulan po namin, sinubukan po namin mag-risk talaga nitong COVID-19. Itong ECQ pa po natin. And we're doing it via Zoom. So we tried, tinitingnan po namin kung paano po yung magiging reaction din ng mga magulang, kung mag-enroll po ba, maglalabas po ba ng pera currently, lalo-lalo na po medyo gipit din po kasi tayo, no? Kahit paano po meron naman po mga sumali kasi nga po, the parents also are very, they really care about the mental health also of their kids. Lalo-lalo na puro gadgets na nga lang po yung nagagawa nitong summer. Kaya nabigyan naman po ng chance makapag-online coaching. Ang ginagawa po namin naka-Zoom. Tapos, syempre volleyball, medyo mahirap po. Ball drills and everything. So, we started more of the strength and conditioning program po muna. We focus more on the preparation part for them to keep engaged in the sports or keep them active. And then from there, we move forward po. Kapag okay na po yung space nila, and may place na po sila to perform their ball drills po. So yun po yung online coaching na ginagawa po namin.
I'll share also, not my experience, but I know somebody sa probinsya, no, how they're doing it. Well, hindi siya online. Well, mas maluwag sa probinsya now kasi hindi sila, ano ba tayo na yun? MECQ. So hindi sila ganon. More GCQ sila. So they're looking at their trade, delivering their sports, still may konting face-to-face, but how they do it, hindi siya close contact, di ba? So, and tama, like with Coach Nicole, they focused more on the fitness aspect, but they also engage the students this is through the online for their social and psychological development. So it's a mix, no? So may mga online elements, tapos meron silang sort of what we call face-to-face, but with proper distancing. And I think they do that sa mga barangay courts nila, or maybe some other private court or something. So that's one model, but I don't think it will depend on kung nasaan kayo, kung babagay yung sitwasyon na yun.
Last two questions po to wrap up our session for today with Coach Eski. Sige po, may mga tanong pa po ba tayo? Ayan, Coach Eski, very good question also. For CAINTA, we can only train athlete from LM to high school. How can we adapt the long-term athlete development program on this kind of setup?
Oh, that's the most important. You can really adapt it very well because actually, this age, this period, yung elementary to high school, ang pinaka-crucial. First, can I ask, are you familiar, have you read anything about the long-term athlete development? Joar, did I pronounce that right?
Yes daw po, Coach.
Okay. So you're familiar with the different stages and may mga guidelines yun, di ba? So with that framework, how you can, so your question is, you basically, it's a guideline, it's a framework. So what you do is yung mga guidelines na ginagawa nila, and that's what you want to encourage and do it in your own practice. I gave you some key points, mga highlights. It's like, if you're in elementary, don't do any selection process. I mean, wag kayo mag-cut ng athletes as much as possible. If you have 300 students, get the 300 involved in sports one way or the other. Okay? Look for the right competition for them. Although now, walang competition, so wala masyado yan. That can be very applied. As third most important is, I did not put it now, but we should not only consider their physiological age or their physical maturity. We have to look at also their mental and social, psychological development. Going to physical maturity, di ba alam natin, we mature at different ways, di ba? May mga 11 years old na nagpi-puberty na, may mga 12, hindi pa. Dahil sa mga lalaki, may mga, kumbaga, late bloomers, early bloomers. So that's what we have to be conscious about. Let us not select athletes dahil mas matangkad sila, mas malaki sila, mas malakas sila, just because they are like that. Because they're early maturers. So I think yun yung pinaka-take home. And don't specialize at a young age, except for a few sports, which is like gymnastics, figure skating, diving, and synchronized swimming.
Coach, can I speak sa mic?
Sure.
Coach, kasi with the setup ng program and competition ng DepEd, yung bata tend to mature early. Kasi they were given a expectation to win. For example, ang unit meet, you have to win gold or silver to advance to another level.
Mm-hmm.
And then going forward to provincial meet, you need to win again.
Yeah.
So tendency, there's the pressure from the coaches to escalate or to advance the training of the kids, since they are being yung bata umaasa rin sa kanya para manalo siya. So what are you going to give to the kids? They are expecting you to give them program na mag-a-advance sila to another level.
Yes,
so
that's fine.
since ang program nila is hanggang ano lang, hanggang high school lang. After that, hindi na siya mahahawakan ng coach niya ulit. They're going to transfer into universities or iba mag-stop. Yung program na nangyayari ngayon with the setup of DepEd and the program ng is something like shortened, not designed to be a long-term athlete development.
Yeah, okay.
Kasi they are focusing on paano ka makarating ng palaro, paano ka manalo,
Well,
selecting the best one.
yun yung, I did not show it anymore, no? Pero yun yung, how would we say, like a traditional model. That's the pyramid
Yes, coach.
model. Well, yeah, that's something that's systemic, no? So wala tayong masyadong control over that. But having said that is, in essence, you don't want to be limited sana just by the palaro. But I know that's very difficult sa public school setting, di ba?
Yes,
You're
coach.
trying to prepare them for the regional meet, the division meet, the regional meet, and then the national or palaro. The training program can continue there on, no? But I guess if I understood you correctly, is that you're looking at the long term up to college and all of that. When we say about long-term athlete, what can you do now to help them in the future is to make sure you develop their skills in the early ages, all the skills, yung sinabi ko, yung fundamental movement skills and yung fundamental sports skills. So that will lay as a foundation for them to succeed later on. Whether hawak nyo na hindi masyado na importante yon. Kayo yung root, kayo yung buhay, kayo yung grassroots talaga. Now, dito lang medyo nagkakaroon ng problema, I think, gathering from what you said, is the competition does not support that. Diba? Because
Yes,
you're
coach.
pressured to win, so kailangan nyo on your end is manalo. And to
Yes,
win, you generally would specialize earlier, okay, because you're only focused on that year. Diba?
Yes, coach.
That's what we hope to influence and change. But I cannot, of course, speak for DepEd on that. But as a coach, siguro yung masasabi ko lang, since we cannot change those things at the moment, is when we train our athletes, we make sure we focus on developing their fundamental movement skills and their sport skills. Like sinabi ko, if you're, anong coach kayo ng anong sport po?
Athletics, coach.
Athletics. Okay. So, depende ko anong event yun, di ba? So, let's
Yes,
say, anong event?
Long distance, coach, middle distance.
Long distance. So, well, distance, of course, it's all running, di ba? But if you want to develop fundamental movement, you want to develop the other things such as throwing, catching, rolling, skipping, etc., etc. Di ba? So, kahit you're focused just on athletics, on the running events, if you're teaching elementary kids, dapat you have to teach all those different movements dapat. Okay? Because not necessarily, because that would also, well, for me as a strength and conditioning coach, it would avoid burnout. It would avoid overuse injuries. So you want them to be more well-rounded. So siguro yun yung pinaka-ano. For the competition side, I would encourage, if possible, yes, you do the palaro, of course, that's important. That's your, kumbaga, Olympics, di ba? But you should try to engage him in other competitions as well. And maybe this is where we hope CAINTA will come in and help. So nag-ano na ako, no? Nag-fish na ako ng ano. To provide other competition opportunities for these kids. Diba? Lastly, sorry kung masyado madami sinasabi ko, is don't limit your pool of athletes. They may be, especially elementary, they may be short now, they may be weak, medyo payatot or ano, but still accommodate as much as you can within your capacity sana. And train them equally. Parang in a sense, give them all your equal attention.
Yun yung problem, coach. Pag hindi ka selected from the desired quota, hindi ka na makakakuha ng other athlete.
Yes.
They stop already.
Yes, yun yung problem. Dapat continuous yung
problem.
training. So, I think now
Nawawalan ka ng ano. Nawawala yung rules ng you should limit your athletes
I think one thing what I was pushing what I think DepEd is doing now is meron ng bagong memo. I'm not sure if you saw it, yung after school sports program. Meron ng provision that your coaching load is part of your teaching load. So this is, I think, on top of the advisory. So kung advisor ka, di ba, one teaching load yun. Tapos kung nag-coach ka, another teaching load yun. So in a sense, di ba, dapat 6 hours lang yung teaching load. 6 teaching loads lang in a day, di ba? So -1 for advisor. So 5 na lang teaching dapat. If you're a coach, -1. So 4 lang ang dapat ang teaching. That is kung kaya ng school nyo.
Coach,
So I'm not sure kung nalabas na yun, but I think there should be a memo on that regarding that ruling this year.
okay. Coach,
Yep.
yeah, Coach Pejong. Yun. Ako nga, no, at least okay itong nai-open yun. So, ang laki ng role ng LGU sa sinasabi mo and with the Coach Joar na kasi nga, that's the problem on DepEd. Pero dun sa side ni LGU, siguro dapat magkaroon na, yan nga, that's why yung mga coaches, kailangan ko yung tulong nyo para magkaroon tayo ng separate siguro meet for dun sa mga pools. Like, ganun, di ba? Yung plans natin, like, kung hindi sila makapasok sa school meets, meron sa local meet. Like, ang tatargetin naman natin is the Batang Pinoy. Pwede, no?
Yeah. Yeah, so I think yun yung kailangan nyo lang is calendar. I think maganda yung sa Batang Pinoy at saka palaro, hindi sila nagko-conflict, di ba? In terms of calendar, I think. So ang dapat na lang i-fill in is, let's not focus only on the top athletes. Paano yung mga ibang athletes, players, who don't make it to that level? So dapat sasaluhin in a sense yung LGU to provide competitions, even if it just be like a sort of what we call fun competition for these other participants.
Yes,
And
okay.
to be honest, yung binanggit ko yung kaibigan ko from Leeds Beckett, they did a review article on mga Olympians, the top players, and many of them usually were not junior champions. Ibig sabihin, mga late bloomers. So hindi ibig sabihin na champion ka sa elementary, all of a sudden you expect them to be champion sa college level, national level. Meron, but you might miss out on the many who are not yet there physically kasi hindi pa sila physically mature to be able to compete with those early maturers. So dapat yung competition structure nyo, program nyo, would somehow invite these players to still participate and have fun in competition.
Okay, Coach. Thank you, Coach.
All right. Last question before we wrap up.
Thank you, Coach Joar, for your question.
Coach Eski, my last question. Yeah. After the
What?
pandemic, are you willing to visit us in CAINTA? Punta ka na daw dito.
Yes, of course. But we don't have to wait until the pandemic's over. We can always think of something.
Ayan. Thank you so much, Coach Eski. I think that's all for Q&A. For sure, marami tayong natutunan. But before we close our session for today, bato mo natin muna ulit kay Sir Pidjo for reminders. Sir Pidjo?
Yeah, thank you, Coach Eski. Thank you, coaches din. This is our first day pa lang, no? So, bukas, yung link natin, sisend ulit namin sa email. The same time, tapos, yun nga pala, request, ang speaker natin tomorrow is Coach Ed Obiena and Ma'am Judith Staples. Nagre-request sila, ito na yung mga ibang mga tanong nyo, kung ano ang pwede nating gawin na workouts, paano yung coaching, pwedeng gawin ngayong pandemic na nasa bahay, kung paano, isi-share nila yan. Coach Ed is my coach. Online ngayong pandemic, siya yung aking naging coach ngayon, conditioning coach. So, yan, madami. Masaya to bukas. Sana ganito pa rin tayo, request lang nila tayo, sports attire. So, expect natin na medyo gagalaw-galaw tayo. And konting space sa, konti lang. Basta't makagalaw lang kayo, coaches. So, yun. Bukas, 1 p.m., same time, yun. Yun lang, mababago lang natin is mag-sports attire po tayo. Yun. Salamat, maraming salamat ulit, Coach Eski. Napakaganda. Galing. Dalawin mo kami dito sa CAINTA sa mga susunod. Hindi na pala natin hintayin matapos ang pandemic. Ano ka na namin Maraming salamat po. Maraming salamat. Nicole?
Thank you, Sir Pijong. Again, Coach Eski, maraming salamat po. And napaunlakan niyo yung invite namin to discuss further the Coach Development Framework, LTAD program, the possibilities na pwede nating ma-adapt tong LTAD program ito in the future. And na-discuss din natin, syempre, yung napaka-importanteng role ng LGU natin, especially dun nga sa parang after-school program, paano yung mga hindi talaga nakapasok, di ba, sa varsity teams. And syempre, the importance of sport also, even we're in this kind of pandemic situation. So, in behalf of maraming salamat po ulit for everyone who joined us for the first day of our webinar program right now. And again, we would like to thank Mayor Kit Nieto for this one also, for this opportunity na magawa po natin tong webinar na to. And syempre to the One CAINTA Sports Development Office, maraming salamat din po. Sir Pijong, thank you so much. Request lang po, turn on po natin yung video natin lahat and then we can take a photo sana for our documentation. Sir Pijong?
Yes. Tayo? Open natin ang ating videos para meron tayo yung picture for documentation. Or Coach Edric, good afternoon. Sports Development, Sports Coordinator, Sir Xavier, magandang hapon. Ang dami. Open tayo ng videos for our picture. Coach Pao, Coach Danieli, Coach Ed, Coach Bang, dami. See you tomorrow lahat yung iba pa hindi na-open, pa-open po ng videos and smile. Yung sa mga bagong coaches natin na hindi ko pa nami-meet, hi po, dire-diretso na tayo. Yan. And one more. Alright. Maraming salamat po sa pag-attend. See you tomorrow. Yung link natin, isi-send po ulit namin sa email nyo. Dun sa mga, message po kayo dun sa One CAINTA Sports Office page for yung sa mga wala pang email para maka-receive po kayo ng link for tomorrow. Tapos, gawa tayo ng group chat, no? Para dun ma-update po tayo. So, yun lang po. Questions, coaches, wala na siguro. Tomorrow na. Nicole, back to you.
Yun lang po. Nakapag-photo na po tayo? Okay na, Sir Pijong?
Yeah.
Okay. For more questions po, if meron po kayong mga tanong for Coach Eski, yun nga po, i-echo ko lang po ulit. Message na lang po dun sa One CAINTA Sports Office page. Or you can message directly. Yung video po natin ngayon, alam ko po, ipopost po din ng office po natin para makapag-recap din po tayo. You can comment down na lang din po yun. So, yun lang po. Maraming salamat po. See you everyone tomorrow. Thank you so much po.
See you tomorrow.
Bye.